My name is Marisa, and I have the privilege to be here with Andrew. And today I would like to hear from Andrew how he's manifesting this wonderful change in his life, in his body shape, because I knew Andrew a few months ago, and he was, I think, twice the size he is now. So share with us, please, Andrew.
Okay, sure. I think that I was at maybe a couple years ago. I was at 360, 370. That I got extremely fat, like I was going through a lot of mental health issues
Mm.
with depression and PTSD type issues. And I got really fat, and I think the low point was when I started to get so fat that I couldn't even wipe my own butt, you know. Like my belly was so big and I really almost didn't care, like I just was so unhappy. Um, but it was kind of uh a moment of reckoning, so to speak, that like at first I just wanted to lose enough weight so I could, like wipe my butt when I went to the bathroom, right? And then there was that sort of, and then I just felt so tired. I felt so sick, all the time. And there was that idea of if I changed my diet, I might feel better, right? So my diet at the time was really poor, and I've been vegetarian my whole life, pretty much. I mean, I'm 45 now. I've been a vegetarian since I was 18. But having said that, I would eat the worst food. I would eat a cake frosting, just chips and candy, just every day. Like I just really didn't care. And so I started to scale it in, and I guess the first step was just removing processed foods from my diet. And so now I'm at about 280, you know, at about 280. And it's still hard for me to exercise. Like exercise is really hard to do. Uh, but I focus a lot on diet and doing different, trying to remove sugar like that. That's a big thing. And I pretty much, have removed dairy, like I have a vegan whole foods diet. I strive towards that. And so I avoid animal products and processed foods.
Mhm.
And I've experimented with other like time restricted eating practices that I tried. I heard a lot of good things about intermittent fasting,
Mhm.
and I did intermittent fasting for a while, for a few months, eating only 4 hours or 8 hours during the day, and I lost weight. I think I've been for the past maybe year or so, like I've been fluctuating between 300 and 280.
Mhm.
So now I'm kind of at the low point again and trying to kind of break further. I guess the goal weight would be 220, around there. So I'm still fat at this point, but I do feel more confident. And I think that just having the right people and the right support networks in place, and instead of, trying to do it by yourself. Um, and then now that COVID is lifting, I think the other goal is to have as much in-person contact as possible. Like I'm not working right now, and um, so I don't go out that much sometimes. And when I get isolated, there's that temptation to eat more. So I
Mhm.
try to have as much in-person support as possible. And my doctor's office offered a nutrition program so that I kind of revised my diet. I try to eat more vegetables too. And then the protein sources, I got to alternate tofu and beans. So like a typical diet will be like as I was discussing with Marissa, I have a oatmeal, so I start the day with like a big thing of like oatmeal and cocoa, flaxseed protein powder, like I think it's pea protein and quinoa. Uh, and Yeah, so I start off the day with that and with blueberries and then a banana kind of mixed in. And then beans or tofu for the day, along with vegetables. I try to eat like beets and like depending on the day, like celery or carrots or yams. Roast often celery raw, and yeah, that's pretty much what I would have for any given day. I try to I decided not to do intermittent fasting because it's so hard to do, and once you fall off, it's hard to resume. So that helped me, and I definitely lost weight. But if for some reason I broke, the routine, once you get in the routine, you can stick with it. But if you break it for some reason, something happens and you start eating in the evening, it's very difficult to resume. That's what I've found. So I think that having, eating throughout the day, just being more mindful about what you eat, having eating certain items, I think is a good way to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, I'm really impressed with how smaller you look, and I also enjoyed you saying that don't go all the way on your own because it's too hard, and I agree with you. Yes, um, there is always someone there. There is always a service that will help us get rid of excess weight. And the other nice thing that you said is what you have chosen now to eat, even though it's so hard to break a habit. Like you say, once you change your routine, it becomes really hard. And I have experienced that too in my weight loss journey. So when choose deliberately not to buy processed foods, that's a big win, because how many of us are so addicted to eating these processed foods, and then you let it go. We know it makes a huge difference. It changes everything, doesn't it? And the sweets, I mean, sugar is highly addictive. Yeah. And you manage to cut the sugar down. So what happens? Do you feel like, do you crave for sugar? Do you have those moments?
I don't, to be honest, like yeah, it was kind of strange that I, this was brought to my attention a long time ago, the whole idea of like not having sugar in your diet.
Mm,
And when I first heard about that concept, I mean, I've been fat most of my life. And I kind of go fluctuate. Sometimes I'll be in good shape, other times not. But I've always been kind of chunky, I think.
yeah.
And the whole idea of cutting sugar out of your diet, when this was brought to, someone had mentioned this to me a long time ago, I was like, well, that's ridiculous, right? Because sugar is in everything. How can you cut sugar out of your diet?
Mhm.
And I think that when I started getting more motivated, I don't know, radical perhaps about just getting back into shape. I felt so sick all the time. Like I couldn't get out of bed for days, like I wouldn't do anything. And I just had felt so fatigued and so brain fogged.
Mhm.
And the one thing that pretty much everyone says, I mean, I think that's what's one of the problems with diet and like weight loss, is that there's so many different methods.
Mhm.
So am I really going to go gung ho on a certain method when it may not be the right way? That you're killing yourself to maintain some regimen, but
Yeah.
you didn't need to, and it's not even effective. But that's the one thing that everyone across the board says, that sugar is really bad for you, and I agree. So I don't have cravings for sugar anymore. Honestly, like I now that you mention it, I started undergoing like ketamine treatment for depression, which is
Mhm.
a very strange form of treatment. Like I have severe depression. I was hospitalized for depression recently, and I started doing ketamine treatment. I've heard great things about it, and it's
Mhm.
benefited me. But it's a very strong, like a dissociative tranquilizer that they administer to relieve depression symptoms. So the
Mhm.
side effects are kind of harsh. Like when you take it, and then over time, it lessens the effects of depression. So the one thing is I had really intense sugar cravings, but only then, only when actually taking the ketamine. I would get these really, really intense sugar cravings. It
Mm,
tastes bad too. And the
mm,
funny thing is they actually give you sugar, you know? So you'll
mm,
be sitting there uh, at the doctor's office and there'll be a big bowl of candy. Isn't that something? Um, but yeah, so like I would lose control and I would feel the effects, the unpleasant effects, and just eat lots of sugar, because I guess that was sort of my I don't know how to say it, my fail safe, so I kind of fell back on that, right? And it was kind of ridiculous. I kind of relapsed on sugar, right? But only during this time, pretty much.
yeah.
So it's gotten to the point that I don't need to anymore. I'm still undergoing ketamine treatment, but I bring in something else and I'm able to get past that psychological point
Mm,
that, I need sugar, right?
mm,
Um, and I think with dieting and weight loss, there is that strong emotional connection that and maybe that's what it was. It was maybe a relapse, that I had that emotional connection to sugar, to food, right? And then while I was, uninhibited under the effects of this treatment, I had those same cravings come back.
mm,
So
mm.
I think that it helps to tell myself, or us to tell ourselves, that food
Yes,
does not bring happiness, right? And that the sugar, it'll make you happy, right? Like when you consume it, but it'll lead to long-term unhappiness, like any other chemical addiction, right? That
yeah.
the especially with addictive drugs, if you use addictive drugs, they'll feel good. You'll feel positive effects, and
Yeah.
then afterwards, it'll lead to long-term suffering and pain. And sugar is the same way, I think, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there is, proof, more than you can read, that sugar is a poison. Sugar is highly addictive. Sugar raises the levels of insulin, and when it does that, it makes you prone to develop diabetes, and then the cancers, all cancers of the digestive system. Definitely very addictive. And I think the worst thing about sugar is not even that, the illnesses that it brings into our lives. For me, the worst thing is that the best memories that people our age have are memories of eating sugar. Like, you probably remember your birthday parties with the big cake. You remember when you went out or whatever you did to celebrate. Oh, there's always that dessert. They all made with sugar. And you meet, your first girlfriend, and what do you give her? A box of chocolates. So all those things remain in our memories, and we tend to treat sugar as something special when we should actually get rid of it as quick as possible, because it damages our joints, it damages our liver, it damages our kidneys. It is a poison in every sense of the word, but it is there, it is cheap. I mean, with $1, you can buy 1.5 kgs of sugar here in New Zealand. So, yeah, and getting rid of it is really painful. But then once it's like any addiction, like I said, once it's out, it's out. It won't come back again. Yeah. So that breakfast, would you like to share with us what is in that breakfast? Because it actually, when I first time you showed it to me, I thought, wow, that looks like Nutella. You are not going to eat that.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not.
Sure. So I try to eat blueberries every day because they say that blueberries are good for your memory, and kind of focus and concentration. Cocoa is good for blood pressure, and I was able to reduce my A1C. I was taking pre-diabetic medication to lower my blood sugar. Now I don't need to, because my blood sugar is low enough. Uh, but yeah, so there's cocoa, blueberries,
Amazing.
flaxseed.
Yeah.
Yeah, flaxseed, almond milk. Almond milk is my preferred uh, non-dairy milk that I use. Stevia for a little bit of sweetener,
Yeah.
and a banana. So I take like a ripe banana and kind of mush it in, right? So I'll just set it like the night before, and yeah, so I don't have to cook it anyways. Because with oatmeal, there's oatmeal in there too. So let me recap: oatmeal, cocoa, flaxseed, stevia, protein powder, the
Yeah,
pea quinoa vegetable protein powder, and banana and blueberry.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so whenever with you have oatmeal, you can just set it in the morning in the evening and then just eat it in the morning. It'll be cooked, or I don't
yeah,
know what the term is, like it'll be
yeah,
ready to eat. So yeah,
yeah,
so that's what I have every morning. It's tasty. It's really tasty, really filling, has a lot of protein in it,
yeah.
and there's no oil. That's the other thing that was really hard, I think, was eliminating vegetable oil too. That
Mm,
I don't I try to eliminate vegetable oil from my diet, and olive oil is good for you. It is, but too much of it's also fattening. So
mhm.
yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, so I was actually in the supermarket not long ago, and just before chatting with you, and I saw the Nutella there, and I kept thinking, these are the worst things that the the manufacturer, the food manufacturers can do to us, because Nutella, it's sold as chocolate spread, and all that there is in Nutella is palm oil, engineer the taste, and lots of sugar. And that Nutella doesn't nourish anybody. It only gives a spike up of sugar, and that's the next moment they are down. And some people argue that that's how you develop depression, because you go high up with the sugar, and then all of a sudden you are down because it goes out of your system eventually, like any drug. So fantastic. It is There are so many options out there, aren't there? So tell me more, what are the other options that you have like replaced the ordinary eating that you found that it's much better for you? Options for eating.
Still experimenting, like I said. I've been a vegetarian my whole life, and that's pretty much non-negotiable. I couldn't imagine eating meat.
Yeah.
Uh, and I've been vegan, I guess, for maybe a year or two.
Yeah.
And that's something I've done before, and I'm trying to be recommitted to that. I think it's healthier. So it's
Mhm.
kind of difficult to talk to a lot of doctors because most doctors, if I go to my primary care doctor, they'll give me like a dieting guidelines that don't reflect like a vegetarian or vegan diet.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what I'm into, and it's not for everyone, but for me, I like it. And so there's that. I mean, there is intermittent fasting, I think. I
Yeah.
don't know, like I think may work for some people.
Yeah.
The So I try to, I guess my doctor gave me guidelines and more vegetables and fruit. That's one thing that I wasn't doing. And I've been looking into Ayurveda recently, that
Yeah.
I saw like an Ayurvedic doctor,
Yeah.
and that's a whole nother ball of wax, and
Yeah.
something to try, right? I think that I think more than anything else, like if we consciously choose what we eat, like that's huge, right?
Yeah.
And just try to use food as medicine,
Yeah.
and instead of just eating yeah, I did that for such a long time, that I would like, what would drive my food choices is
Yeah.
what would be tasty, right?
Yeah.
What would make me feel good, what I would enjoy eating.
Yeah.
But I think that we need to focus on what will make us healthy, right?
Yeah.
Having
Definitely.
healthy eating choices, and
Yeah.
having that sort of paradigm shift of examining what you eat
Yeah.
is more important than what exact means. I mean, some people are into the keto diet, or diets that mm, maybe more like meat oriented,
Yeah.
and I think that's fine. It's not for me, but I think as long as someone is consciously, that we're really being actively choosing what we
Yeah.
eat, like from a health perspective, not from a gut, what would taste perspective.
Yeah.
I think that you'll come to the right choice.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that I'm still learning about Ayurveda, and I'm kind of hesitant to talk on it.
Mm.
But yeah, so there's different body types, different doshas, and
Yeah.
then to feel better, there are different foods assigned. So I guess for my dosha, like no onions or garlic. Uh, um, so I don't eat that, and I'll try it. We'll see what happens. The other interesting concept that was brought to my attention was to not eat canned food, not eat canned or frozen food. or
Mm,
the idea of eating not necessarily raw food, but don't buy fresh food and then cook it and then eat it and then don't store it over long periods of time, that
mm,
the food loses its life energy, its energy that you would get
yeah,
if you can it, right?
mm,
Or
yeah,
freeze it. So
yeah,
I that's the latest thing like I'm doing, where instead of I used to buy a lot of canned beets and canned beans,
yeah,
canned vegetables, because it's so much easier, right? That
yeah,
you can just stock your shelf with all the canned beets.
yeah,
Um,
mm,
and now like I try to go to the store and buy fresh beets and then just roast them, stick them in the microwave and eat them
yeah,
like that,
yeah.
instead of having canned beets. So yeah, so that's another technique.
And that's great because you mentioned two interesting things there. One is about Ayurveda, the Vedic science, and let's talk about that. So I see myself as a scientist. I stand by science, but I also respect Ayurveda in Vedic science because our science, the science that I'm trained on, it started in the 19th century. Ayurveda is 12,000 years old. And so, they definitely have a much bigger bag of knowledge than we have as, the modern scientists. So it's always important, like, life energy. We scientifically, it's very hard to measure life energy of foods, and we hardly have any instrument to measure it. But Ayurveda says that when you eat fresh, natural food, especially, freshly picked foods, you'll feel much better after eating. So that's a great thing. And why not use this knowledge for us, to improve our lives. So that's really, really, really great. Now the other is the canned food. You see, we are put in today's world. The world expands at vast, speed. So, unimaginable speeds, and we humans, we just follow the path of expansion. And as it happens, we also are expanding ourselves. We want to get more, to be more, to do more. And we only have 24 hours in a day and about 100 years to spend on this planet. If we are lucky, if we don't eat too badly. And then what happens? That causes stress. And then come the stress professionals and said it's really bad for you to be stressed, or to experience a stressful situation. Then that adds, because I have to run against time. And what's the best way to run against time? Go and buy food that's already cooked. And that's the biggest mistake, because that is what stresses the body. Because first, there is no life energy. Second, there is no vitamins. You cannot find vitamins unless it's added in canned food. And added vitamins aren't always absorbed by our bodies. And then the risk that we take by eating the preservatives that are those canned foods, they are full of preservatives, otherwise they'll go off before we eat them. So eventually they go off in our stomachs and all that. So fantastic that it's very clear for you that canned food, processed food is no good. The other thing is frozen food. You see, I eat peas, but peas here in New Zealand, they are like snap frozen, and you just keep it for 1 or 2 weeks, and that's it, because they will have less life energy than the very fresh ones, but they apparently, I've been told by dietitians, they still preserve some of the vitamins when they are snap frozen, and you eat them in a short period of time, and just don't leave it in your freezer for 6 months or whatever. So fantastic. I'm really enjoying, learning, and what I talk to you also, reaffirms and reinforces my position and my belief that this is what we are doing. And this is the best thing that we can do to keep our weight off, to stay healthy, to live a long life without disability, without illnesses that can definitely be avoided by eating properly. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else that you would like to share?
Well, so what are you? I'm sure you have many tips. What's what advice would you give me, or
If
anything would
I
you share?
Yeah, well, definitely what I have in my mind for you and for everyone who is on this journey of shedding excess weight, my best advice is just keep going. Don't let anything, you know, um, don't let anything trip you over, because there are moments in life when we feel like I can't handle this anymore, and then off goes. I actually had know a person who was working with me, was doing like extremely well on weight loss, like losing 1 kg per week. And then all of a sudden, something really, really bad happened in her family. And then that was it. She threw all the program out and she said, no, I need to eat for comfort. So that moment was the moment when she stepped back because she couldn't handle the pressure. So if this happens to you, just remember that there are ways to cope with with the unexpected, with the uncertain, with those things that make us feel defeated, lost, and disconnected. There are things, and I believe, for me and for the people that I know, the best thing is to hold yourself together. I've come this long way, and this is just one of my big problems, and I'm not by any means, under any circumstances, step back into that whole old pattern that made me hold my fat in, that made me sick, that made me unwell. I'm not going back there because this problem hit me. And that's it. And keep going, because these problems are going to turn up. And they turn up when we least expect. Any, a small incident or any big incident that hits you emotionally, they go that way. Stop and think, I've gone this way. Now I'm up on the ladder of success, of well-being. I'm not going to allow myself to step down, to go back. And that's what I would share with you. Would you like to ask me any questions? Any other?
That's good. Yeah, I appreciate that advice.
Yeah, and I'm very proud of you, Andrew. You are,
Thank you.
I want to show the world and tell the world how well you have done. It's rewarding to see people like you, with because you do have, lots of problems on your plate that you have to manage, right? Is not only the eating, but the other health issues. And somehow you manage to keep them in one space and you manage your eating. And I have the impression that when you manage your food intake, you also feel mentally better. Is that
Definitely.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a big self-esteem builder.
yeah. And also, the levels of energy go up, and probably the hope goes up as well because you have more energy. It's lovely.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, with your permission, I'm going to share this with the world. And thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'll share. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, let's share. Let's encourage everyone to be lean, to give up processed foods, to give up foods full of fat and salt and sugar, and let's be our real healthy self.
Definitely. Definitely.
Lovely. Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate your time.